What if the reason your life still looks the same has nothing to do with hard work, luck, or timing? What if the real problem is much deeper than that? Most people spend years trying to manifest money, love, success, freedom, but almost nothing changes. They visualize, they repeat affirmations, they wait for signs, they hope, and slowly, without realizing it, they train their mind to live in permanent waiting mode. Because the moment you say, I want it, your brain quietly hears something else. I don't have it. And that single hidden message may be keeping your desires trapped in the future forever. But there's a strange psychological shift that very few people talk about. A method so simple that most people ignore it completely. Yet once you understand it, the way you think about manifestation may never be the same again. The mind does not respond strongly to distant possibilities. It responds to what feels familiar, what feels remembered, what feels emotionally real. And that's where this changes everything. Because the fastest manifestation method may not be imagining your future, but remembering it as your past. Think about that carefully. Not tomorrow, not next month, not someday, yesterday. What happens when your brain stops chasing the desire and starts accepting it as something that already happened? Something completed, something natural, something finished. Suddenly, the emotional pressure changes, the desperation weakens, the obsession disappears, and your subconscious begins reacting differently. Because the brain treats memory differently than fantasy. Memories feel certain, stable, safe, and once your subconscious accepts an idea as real memory, your identity slowly begins to shift around it. In this video, you're going to learn the time collapse manifestation method. You'll discover why wanting often pushes desires further away, how your subconscious mind actually interprets time, and why many people unknowingly block their manifestations by emotionally living in the future. We'll also uncover a lesser-known psychological principle about memory, identity, and perception that explains why some people suddenly experience rapid life changes after making one internal shift. And near the end of this video, you'll learn the most important part of all, mana, how to make your manifestation feel natural instead of forced. Because that may be the real secret nobody explains properly. And the strange part is, once you truly understand this method, you may start noticing that reality doesn't always change first on the outside. Sometimes it changes silently within you before the external world finally catches up. So stay with me until the end, because one small shift in the way you think about time could completely change the way you manifest your future. Welcome to the Soul Manifestation Code. If you're ready to unlock deeper mindset shifts, hidden manifestation truths, and powerful subconscious techniques, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Most people never realize they are manifesting from a state of absence. On the surface, it sounds positive. They say things like, I want success. I hope money comes into my life. Maybe one day I'll finally become the person I want to be. But hidden inside those sentences is a dangerous message the subconscious mind quietly accepts as truth. And that message is simple. I don't have it. The mind is always listening beneath the words. It responds less to what you say and more to the emotional state behind what you say. That's why so many people stay trapped in endless cycles of wanting. The desire stays emotionally far away, like something floating in the distance, always close enough to imagine, but never close enough to touch. And over time, the brain becomes trained to experience life through separation. You wake up wanting, you sleep wanting, you visualize from a place of wanting. Even your affirmations often come from wanting. And without realizing it, you reinforce the same reality every single day. Because wanting creates distance. The moment you deeply crave something, you unconsciously place it outside yourself, somewhere in the future, somewhere beyond your current identity. And the more you chase it emotionally, the more your mind keeps confirming its absence. That's the strange contradiction most people never see. The harder they emotionally chase their desire, the more real the feeling of not having it becomes. Waiting creates another hidden problem. It teaches the nervous system to stay alert for what is missing. The brain starts scanning reality for evidence that the manifestation has not arrived yet. No message, no opportunity, no proof. And every time the mind checks for results, it silently tells itself again, it's still not here. That's why so many manifestations remain stuck in the future for years, because the future is where manifestations go to die. And once you truly understand that, a much bigger question appears. What happens when you remove the future completely? This is where the time collapse method changes everything. Instead of mentally placing your desire somewhere ahead of you, you move it behind you. You stop treating it like an event that still needs to happen, and you begin treating it like something that already did. That is the entire shift. Simple on the surface, but extremely powerful once the mind accepts it. Most people say things like, I will become successful, one day I'll find love, soon my life will change. But every one of those thoughts keeps the desire trapped in the future. The brain continues waiting because you continue telling it the experience has not arrived yet. The time collapse method interrupts that pattern completely. Instead of saying, I will become successful, you quietly shift into a different inner reality. That already happened, not as a fantasy, not as forced positivity, but as a completed experience, something emotionally finished. And this next part matters more than most people realize. You do not imagine it happened 5 seconds ago. You place it in yesterday, far enough in the past for the emotional intensity to settle down, because yesterday feels different to the brain. Yesterday feels stable, familiar, natural, real. Think about how you remember something that happened yesterday. You do not obsess over it. You are not desperate for proof. You are not emotionally chasing it. Your mind simply accepts it as part of reality, finished, certain. And that emotional certainty creates a completely different internal signal than hope or longing ever could. The brain reacts differently to memories than fantasies. Fantasies often feel distant and unstable, but memories feel grounded. Even imagined memories can influence emotional states because the subconscious responds strongly to repetition and emotional familiarity. That's why the time collapse method is not about pretending, it's about shifting psychological position. Your subconscious trusts remembered experiences more than imagined possibilities. And the moment something begins feeling remembered instead of desired, your entire internal state starts changing with it. The strange thing about the mind is that it does not wait for reality to change before changing behavior. It changes behavior the moment identity changes. This happens quietly, often without people noticing it at first. The way you speak changes. The way you react changes. Even your energy in conversations begins shifting, because once the brain accepts that something already happened, it starts operating from a completely different internal position. A person who believes success is far away behaves differently from someone who feels success is already part of their identity. One hesitates, the other moves naturally. One overthinks every decision, the other acts with calm certainty. And these small behavioral differences slowly begin shaping external outcomes. That's why the time collapse method affects more than emotions. It changes your subconscious self-image. If you truly feel the experience already belongs to your past, your brain starts aligning your reactions with that version of yourself. Confidence becomes less forced. Decisions become less fearful. You stop constantly seeking validation because your mind is no longer emotionally begging reality for proof. At the same time, the nervous system begins calming down. Desperation weakens, obsession loses intensity, the emotional pressure surrounding the desire slowly disappears. And this matters more than most people understand, because resistance often comes from emotional strain. The tighter you hold on to something, the more your mind notices its absence. But when the brain accepts it as already done, the body relaxes, the chase slows down. Then another hidden mechanism begins activating. The reticular activating system. This is the brain's filtering system. It constantly decides what deserves your attention and what gets ignored. And once your identity shifts, this filter shifts too. Opportunities that once seemed invisible suddenly stand out. New ideas appear, certain people grab your attention. Patterns become clearer. It feels almost strange, like reality itself is rearranging. But often, the change begins with perception first. Because reality often changes after identity changes. And once the mind stops searching from lack, it starts moving from expectation instead. So, how do you actually use the time collapse method in real life? The process is much simpler than most people expect, but the power comes from consistency and emotional realism. The first step is choosing one clear desire, not 10 different things at once, just one. Maybe it's money, a relationship, success, confidence, freedom, something that emotionally matters to you, because the mind responds more strongly when focus becomes specific. Once you choose the desire, the next step is removing it from the future completely. This is where most people struggle without realizing it. Listen carefully to the phrases you repeat in your head every day. I hope it happens. Maybe one day. Soon my life will change. Those words seem harmless, but they keep reinforcing distance. They train the brain to keep the desire somewhere ahead of you instead of within your identity. The moment you notice those future-based thoughts, interrupt them. Instead of saying, I hope I become successful, shift internally to something much calmer. That already happened, not with force, not like you're trying to convince yourself, just a quiet mental shift, almost like remembering something ordinary. You mentally place the experience in yesterday. Maybe you tell yourself, that conversation already happened. I already became that person. It's done. The key is emotional placement, not imagination alone. Then comes the most important part of the method. You do not try to feel intense excitement. You do not force happiness or overwhelm yourself emotionally. That's where many people accidentally create resistance again. The goal is not emotional intensity. The goal is naturalness. Think about how you feel after something important has already happened and settled into your reality. There's usually calmness, relief, stability, quiet certainty. The nervous system is no longer chasing, it's no longer asking if it will happen. It simply accepts it as real. And when the mind starts feeling that emotional normality around the desire, the entire internal experience begins changing in subtle ways. At first, this method feels unnatural to most people, almost uncomfortable. And that reaction is completely expected because the mind is deeply addicted to striving. It has spent years, sometimes a lifetime, learning that progress means effort, chasing, and constant emotional movement towards something that is not here yet. So when you suddenly remove the chase, the mind doesn't immediately feel peace. It feels uncertainty. People are used to wanting, used to hoping, used to waiting for signs. And when that pattern is interrupted, the ego reacts. It quietly asks for proof. It says things like, but where is it? Or how do you know it worked? This need for confirmation is not about truth. It's about control. The ego wants evidence before it allows belief. But the method works in the opposite direction. The real shift happens when you understand a deeper insight. Your current reality is old evidence. Everything you see right now is not a prediction of what is coming. It is a reflection of what your subconscious has already accepted as normal in the past. Your life today is built from older internal states, older beliefs, and older identity patterns. That's why trying to force external change first often feels slow or frustrating, because the outside world is always reacting to what has already been established within. And this is where the time collapse method becomes psychologically powerful. Your subconscious identity is the real blueprint, not your wishes, not your hopes, not your temporary emotional states, but the identity your mind quietly believes is already true. And when that identity shifts internally, the external world does not instantly respond. There is always a delay, a gap, a quiet transition period where nothing looks different yet everything is already reorganizing beneath the surface. Most reality changes begin internally long before they appear externally. The shift in thinking, the shift in identity, the shift in emotional baseline all happen first. And only after that does physical evidence start to follow in ways that feel sudden, but were actually building silently for a while. At a deeper level, this method begins to move beyond psychology and into something more philosophical, even spiritual in nature. It raises a question that most people rarely pause to consider. What if time is not as fixed as we believe it is? What if the mind experiences time in a far more flexible way than the physical world suggests? Because when you observe the subconscious closely, something interesting appears. It does not clearly separate imagination from memory the way conscious logic does. Both are experienced through feeling, emotion, and internal imagery. A memory can bring real emotional reactions, and an imagined event, when repeated often enough, can start to feel familiar too. This is where identity begins to form its influence. Identity creates perception. The way you see the world is not neutral. It is shaped by who you believe you are internally. And once perception is shaped, it begins to guide attention, interpretation, and meaning. Two people can experience the same situation, but understand it completely differently based on their internal identity. That perception then influences behavior without needing conscious effort. Perception influences action, and action slowly shapes outcomes in the external world. This creates a continuous loop where inner identity becomes the silent driver behind outer reality. Nothing changes randomly. It shifts through layers of internal alignment that most people never consciously observe. From this perspective, manifestation begins to look less like creating something new and more like uncovering something already present within awareness, a shift in recognition rather than invention. Because when the mind fully accepts an identity internally, it stops chasing it as a future possibility and starts operating from it as a present truth. You stop becoming the person and start remembering you already are. Manifestation may not be creation, it may be recognition, maybe nothing is missing. Maybe the life you keep searching for is not far away from you, but simply being treated like it hasn't arrived yet, because the mind doesn't only respond to effort or time, it responds to what you accept as already true inside yourself. And if you keep placing your desire into the future, you keep living in the feeling of absence, even when change is trying to move toward you. So stop asking when it will come. Stop measuring your life by how far it still has to go. And stop pushing everything you want into some distant moment that never feels real. The shift begins when you remove that distance completely. When you no longer treat your desire like something waiting ahead of you, but something that has already settled into your past. Assume it happened yesterday, not as imagination, not as hope, but as an internal certainty your mind can rest in. Let that feeling replace the chasing, the overthinking, and the emotional pressure, and give your mind space to adjust without forcing it. And when you do that, something subtle begins to change, not instantly, not loudly, but quietly, in the background of your awareness. Your thoughts shift, your reactions shift, your sense of identity starts aligning with something new, and reality slowly begins to reflect what your mind has already accepted. Let your mind catch up first, then watch reality follow. If this video made you see manifestation in a different way, make sure to like this video so more people can find this message. And subscribe to our channel, The Soul Manifestation Code, for more deep insights like this.